Hello Year 7s, Miss Shearman here, and today's lesson is on unicellular organisms. So whether you pause this video as you go to complete the tasks or complete them all at the end, I'll leave that up to you. If you're pausing, please complete your do now questions in the Google worksheet now. Okay, so humans and animals and plants are made of lots of types of cells. So the human brain here is, if you zoom in, is made of loads and loads of little neurons, cells like this. A muscle is made of lots of cells packed on top of each other, allowing us to move. Here's a zoom in on the heart. This heart here, these are cells of the heart if we zoom in on a microscope. There's lots of them stacked on top of each other. These are known as tissues. These are the liver cells. This is what a kidney would look like close up. Every single one of these little green dots here is representing a nuclei of a cell. So there's lots of cells. And you can only see it cropped here, but this is showing an egg cell. Now, this is a single cell, but they are found in the ovaries of a female. And here you have sperm cells, and they're found in the testicles of a male testes. But today's lesson is about unicellular organisms. Now, unicellular organisms are living organisms that are entirely made up of one cell. So you saw before, the heart is probably made up of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cells, whereas a unicellular organism is a living being that itself is made up of only one cell. Uni means one, unicellular. There are three main groups of unicellular organisms. So a living organism that is made of one type of cell. Now the first one is bacteria. Okay, you probably heard of bacteria before. Here we have a picture of lots of different types of bacteria. Streptococcus pneumoniae, oh, sounds awful, does what it says. It can cause pneumonia in humans. Clostridium tetani, that is a bacteria that causes tetanus. Have you ever heard of a tetanus injection, which we have to stop us getting sick from tetanus? This bacteria here stops us from getting that. This one here, oh, there. Okay, Vibrio cholerae, this causes cholera. It's a horrible, horrible sickness disease. And then salmonella. That's what you can get if you don't wash certain vegetables, or if you don't cook your chicken and your meat properly. Now here you've got Staphylococcus aureus, and it's the same with this Streptococcus pneumoniae. We said bacteria are single cell organisms. Well, they are. This one here, this single Staphylococcus aureus bacteria is actually a cell on its own. It's different. It's not the same as this one. It's a different organism, and it's not the same as this one. They are just in colonies. That means they're just all working together, but they are still on their own. Same as here. This one here, this is a different type of bacteria, a long rod-shaped one. This is a bacteria. This is another bacteria. They are living on their own, but they appear to be joined together. Now, viruses. This is another group of unicellular organisms. Now, viruses are in the news a lot at the moment. Here we have the coronavirus. This is a single-celled organism which is currently infecting a lot of people around the world. Now, viruses, like the bacteria, are made of one cell. There's a big debate whether viruses are alive or not, but for now, they are just a single-celled organism. This here, this one called a bacteriophage, doesn't even infect humans. This virus infects bacteria. And this is the Ebola virus. This is the HIV virus. You may have heard of all these. Adenoviruses. Adenoviruses cause colds. And the influenza virus, this one here, this one causes the flu, which a lot of people get every year, and which we have vaccinations for to stop us getting so sick from the flu? And protists. Now, as you can see, like the bacteria group, there's lots of different types of bacterium. There's lots of different types of viruses. There's lots of different types of protists. But they are all unicellular. They're all made of one cell, and they all look different, don't they? Here we have an amoeba and a euglena. We'll be looking at those later. And a dinoflagellate. Some of these have flagellum like the bacteria do, but they are not bacteria. Yet they live as single-celled organisms, so they do not have to have many cells to be alive. They themselves are existing on their own. Okay, so in your Google worksheet is a video, and you can click on the video in the Google worksheet now and watch it now, and then complete the questions which go over unicellular organisms. Now, you can leave it till the end of the video if you like, that's no issue, but you will need to go into the Google worksheet, click on this, and then complete your task, which is questions about unicellular organisms. Okay, so we're now going to look at some examples of single-celled unicellular organisms. Now, the first one we have is the amoeba. Now, the amoeba are tiny single-celled organisms. You can really only see them using a microscope. The biggest one is only 1 millimeter across. Now, there are many different species of amoeba, so not all amoebas are the same. They're not all amoebas are classed as the same species. But what makes them interesting and really cool is these little things here, these pseudopods. They are also called false feet. Now, these single-celled organisms use these pseudopods, these sticky out projections, to move. They stretch them, and I'll show you later. They stretch their pseudopod, and then it kind of grips onto the surface or through the water it's in and pulls themselves along. It helps them move around. Now, amoebas eat bacteria, algae, and plant cells. They eat by surrounding their prey using their pseudopods. So they stretch these pseudopods out and wrap it round their prey, which forms like a bubble. And then they digest the food. They pull it inside themselves and then they break it up and digest it. Okay, then they have vacuoles in the middle. So like in the plant cells, they have vacuoles, but they are used to get rid of waste and excess water. So humans get rid of waste and water by feces and urine. Well, amoebas do that by popping it in a vacuole and they expel it from there. Okay, so bacteria. Bacteria are a really well-known single-celled organism. So bacteria are really, really, really small. They are made of one single cell, whereas you and I, we actually are made of 10 trillion cells. Now, if there's just one of them, we call them a bacterium. But if we're talking about the group or more than one bacterium, we call them bacteria. Okay, so bacteria come in many shapes. You saw that on the slide earlier. These here are like rods, E. coli, which live in your digestive tract and can be really, really useful for digesting food, but also can make you sick. They're in rods, and so is salmonella. These are not useful. These can make you sick, as can cholera. Some of them have tails, which are called flagella. They help them swim. But some, as you saw in the last one, which are little spheres, they don't really move around so much and they don't have flagella. But the ones that do rotate their flagella like propellers on a boat to move themselves through liquids. So these E. coli, if they live in your stomach, your digestive tract has got lots of water coming through it all the time. and this helps them move around. Now, bacteria can be found literally almost everywhere. They live on every surface and every type of material. They live on your bedding, they live on your kitchen sideboards, they live on the floor, they are found in the air, in the soil, and most importantly, they're in your body. They are all over the surface of your skin, throughout your tongue, your digestive tract, all the way down your airways, all through your gut and your anus. They are really, really important. They help us to digest food. They also compete with each other. So them fighting each other means that they don't grow too much within our bodies and form large colonies and don't usually make us sick. However, some do make us sick, ones that aren't found in our body that we get from other places, like salmonella, which we can get from uncooked meats. Interestingly, bacteria can also survive, some bacteria in very, very, very cold climates, and some in very, very hot climates like the Sahara Desert. Now here we have the Euglena. They were a type of protist. So remember we had bacteria, viruses and protists, so all types of single-celled organisms. Well, Euglena are a protist and they live in water. They are not a plant or animal cell, although because they're green, you might think they look like a plant cell. Well, that is because they have chloroplasts, so they can make their own food. Now remember, plants use photosynthesis to make their own food. They make glucose, which they can use for energy. Now, Euglena, although they're not a plant cell, they can make their own food with using chloroplast and photosynthesis, but they also absorb food from their environment, so they can do what animal and plant cells both do. Animal cells, whether it's through a multicellular organism digesting food like we do, like eating it, or other such means, they can absorb nutrients from their environment through their cell membrane, and then they can digest it, as well as making glucose from photosynthesis. They also have an eye spot, and like its name suggests, it allows them to see light. Now, they don't have an eye like we do that allows us to see vivid colours and see shapes and judge distance, but they are able to see light. It allows them to move towards really light areas, because for photosynthesis you need light. So if they go towards a light area, they are able to make food through photosynthesis. And if you notice here, they have a flagella, a bit like a bacteria. This allows to help them move. These are really, really interesting organisms. They have chloroplasts like a plant. They have flagella like a bacteria. They can ingest food like an animal. They are very, very, very old, very interesting organisms. Now fungi. Okay, so fungi, they are usually bigger than bacteria. I didn't mention these in the three main groups. Okay, but these are and can be a single-celled organism, a unicellular organism. They're bigger than bacteria, and if there's only one of them, we call it a fungus. Fungi is the name for a group or more than one fungus cell. Okay, so here, if you guys have been doing a lot of baking with your parents in the lockdown, we have yeast. Yeast is an example of a fungus. It's a single-celled organism, and we use it for baking and making beer. Okay, so fungi are more like animals than plants. For one thing, fungi cannot make their own food like plants do, so they don't have chloroplasts, but instead they eat other organisms like animals do. Individual fungi, they don't move. They don't have pseudopods like amoebas. They don't have flagella. But what they do is they make spores, a bit like seeds. They produce little spores, and you can see them here, these little green lumps here. This is where the yeast is budding, but they can also produce spores, which is carried by wind and rain, and then they grow into new fungus cells where they land. So they can travel really far depending on the conditions of the day. Now, with fungi, there are good guys and there are bad guys. Some make our food moldy and some cause diseases, like your fungal nail infections and white patches on your tongue is caused by a fungus. That's called thrush. But they also break down dead plants and animals, keeping the world tidier. As part of some of them are decomposers. Now, like I said before, we use some fungi like yeast to make bread rise and brew beer. Okay, so you can either do this now or at the end of the video. You'll need to complete the task on your worksheet about the 4 examples here of unicellular organisms. What are the features of a unicellular organism and how do these features help? Right, have a little think about that. Okay. Now here, we've got the motion of unicellular organisms. So this is the amoeba here, this one here. This is the amoeba. We talked about this earlier, very, very briefly. Now, as you can see, this amoeba here is using its pseudopods. Like I said, see this one here? It's stretching and stretching. It's quite slow. It doesn't move very fast, but all these little molecules inside are pushing the pseudopod out, which allow it to move. But conversely, the euglena, another single-celled organism which we talked about earlier, that really interesting one that can do photosynthesis as well as ingest food and have a tail. It uses its flagella. Now, if you can see it here, this tiny little whippy tail, its flagella allows it to move. You can see all of them moving around now. I mean, they don't move very far, very fast, but they are really, really small. So for them, it's all that they need to do. Okay, so if you would like, for one of your tasks, using some of the features of the unicellular organisms you've learned about, create your own unicellular organism. You can label it and explain what the different parts are for. If you'd like to draw that and send it to your teacher, that'd be great, or you can make one on the computer if you have the skills to do so. You can use anything. Remember, there's lots of types of unicellular organism. Okay, thank you, Year 7.